delighted to be back in Ottawa. Honestly, we're delighted to be back in our own bed for a night. Thanks also to our MC for his introduction, his warm introduction. He's a family man, a volunteer, deeply involved in his community. He plays hockey. In fact, he builds a skating rink every year in the backyard for the children on the street, a small business owner, a financial expert, and our Conservative candidate for Ottawa South, Dev Balkasoon. This is a Friday night, and look at the crowd. Let's congratulate all the volunteers who got us together. But friends, more than anything, I want to thank you for being here, because it is you we are depending on to do the hard and important work that brings the win. And I know that you are all here, that we are all here. Parce que nous croyons en notre parti, mais par-dessus tout. Nous sommes ici pour notre pays, le meilleur pays au monde. Because we are all here because we believe in our party, yes, but above all else, we're here for Canada, proud of our history, confident in our future, in this, our Canada, the best country in the world. And friends, we know, these are easy things to say about our country, but we know that the success of our country, our peace, our prosperity, our prospects, these things are no accident. They are the product of the sacrifices and hard work of the many generations who came before us, of the decisions, the sometimes difficult choices that they made. Friends, choices matter, and there isn't a bigger choice, a choice more consequential than for Canadians, than who Canadians will choose on October the 19th. Le choix est simple et sérieux, car parti, quelle équipe a le leadership, l'expérience dans un monde instable et dangereux de plus en plus pour assurer la sécurité des Canadiens et des Canadiennes et la force de notre économie. The choice is simple, and it is serious, friends. Which party, which team has the leadership, the experience in an unstable and dangerous world to ensure the security of Canadians and the security of our country? That choice, friends, the right choice is not the risk of going back to the era of tax hikes and permanent deficits, but to keep moving forward with the Conservative Party of Canada. Now, friends, since coming to office, our government has also had to make choices, sometimes difficult choices. International markets are reminding us almost daily that we are living once again in times of global economic uncertainty. The fall of oil and commodity prices, turbulence in the economic and financial markets in China, the ongoing debt crisis in Europe. All these things create real challenges that have and do affect our country. But friends, in spite of that, through all the ups and downs, this country has kept moving forward. Our economy is growing for the 7th straight year, and Canada has been an island of stability in the world. And friends, it has been so because we are following a long-term, low-tax plan for jobs and growth, our economic action plan. That is why, after all these years of banking and financial turmoil, our Canada still has the strongest, most stable banking and financial sector in the entire world. That's why we have in Canada, by far, the lowest debt burden in the G7 et des années avant la plupart des autres pays développés. Nous avons rétabli l'équilibre budgétaire au Canada, and we have, years ahead of other developed countries, we have returned to a balanced budget at the national level in Canada. In fact, friends, just a little bit of news on that front, because I'm not sure you actually hear any real news. But the real news is that for the first 3 months of this fiscal year, difficult months, we all admit, but for those first 3 months, we're ahead of schedule. We actually have a $5 billion surplus for the first 3 months. Now, Mr. Mulcair and the NDP came out and said, we don't believe it. That's not possible. You know, these are numbers from the Department of Finance. This is actual dollars in and dollars out. The NDP says, we don't believe it. You've been cutting taxes. You couldn't possibly have balanced the budget. No, friends, that's how you do it. You balance the budget and you reduce taxes. I'll talk a little bit more about the NDP later. Our economic action plan, that is why the Canadian economy has steadily been creating jobs. And why, since the global financial crisis, why, friends, our economy has created nearly 1.3 million net new jobs. 1.3 million more people working today, almost all full-time. And that, friends, is the best job creation record among the G7 group of countries. Our economic action plan, that is why we have lowered taxes to encourage growth and employment. We've lowered taxes for individuals, for families, for job-creating businesses. And we do so, friends, because we start with a premise. We Conservatives believe that your money belongs to you, not to the bureaucracy. From income splitting for families and for seniors, to our universal child care benefit and tax-free savings accounts, from the enhancements we're going to make to registered education savings plans and registered disability savings plans and a new permanent home renovation tax credit. From the first big one we did, the cut to the GST from 7 to 6 to 5%, to the dramatic reductions we have made to taxes paid by small business. The lowest federal tax burden in Canada since John Diefenbaker was Prime Minister, the lowest federal tax burden in over 50 years. Our economic action plan, that's why we're opening markets, concluding trade agreements with Europe, with the Americas, with Asia. When we came to office, in spite of being one of the most open trade-dependent economies in the world, Canada had trade agreements with only 5 other countries. Aujourd'hui, nous avons des accords commerciaux avec 44 pays représentant plus de la moitié de l'économie mondiale. Today, we have trade deals, friends, with 44 countries representing over half of the global economy. That's the difference. And I just want to give you one little statistic. If you look at Canada's free trade access in the world, which is going to be so important for our economy in the decades to come, 99% of it was created by Conservative governments. Our economic action plan, friends, that is why we are building the national infrastructure here in Ottawa. That has meant things like the Confederation Line, the Convention Centre, the Vimy Memorial Bridge, the Centrepoint Theatre Expansion Project. I could go on, the list is long, but the point is this. In the next decade, under our New Building Canada plan, we are pursuing, by far, the longest, largest, most ambitious national infrastructure investments by a federal government in the history of this country. And we are not stopping there. We're continuing to implement our economic action plan to create good jobs and build our economy. We're making announcements on targeted investments to help hardworking Canadian families and to keep our economy growing, always, friends, in a way we can easily afford. And friends, because of this economic management, I ask you to sit back and look at the big picture. Compare it to most other countries. Compare it to some of our provinces. Friends, because of our economic management at the national level, Canada has a balanced budget with lower federal taxes, with more spending and transfer payments for infrastructure, healthcare, education, more benefits for our families and seniors. There are no better economic fundamentals. There are no better economic prospects. There is no better place to be than Canada. Make sure they hear it, friends. That's the Conservative record, and that's why Canada is the best country in the world. But we're now at that point in the speech where I got to do some comparison shopping. What would our opponents do exactly? The Liberals and the NDP say they go around the country announcing basically Conservative plans with bigger price tags. That's what they do. And how do they say they will pay for all of that? Justin Trudeau said at first that he didn't have to explain how he'll pay for his spending promises, his tens of billions of dollars of spending promises, because, as he famously announced, the budget will balance itself. You can't make stuff like this up. Well, they're changing their tune now, the Liberals. Now they say they will run a deficit, a modest deficit. Well, maybe 3 modest deficits. Well, maybe modest deficits starting at $10 billion. Friends, we've seen these modest deficits from the Liberal government of Ontario that just keep growing and going, and now the province's credit rating has been downgraded, and we cannot risk anything like that happening at the national level. Friends, remember the mess that we had federally when those modest Liberal deficits of the 1970s went on for 30 years and only ended with big tax hikes and deep Liberal cuts to healthcare and education and seniors. And friends, we are never going to let our country go back to that kind of era. Now the NDP. Where do I start? The NDP, on the other hand, say they will pay for their spending promises, their tens of billions of dollars of spending promises, and balance the budget no less by tax increases, modest tax increases. They say they will start by raising taxes on job-creating businesses because they say those taxes are too low. But when Mr. Mulcair was asked what the business tax rate is, he didn't have a clue. And that's NDP ideology for you, friends. They don't know how much tax you pay, but they know they want you to pay a hell of a lot more. You know, friends, we have seen how this NDP theory works in practice in too many provinces. They can claim all they want, that they will balance the budget by raising taxes, mais les hausses d'impôts n'équilibrent pas le budget, elles tuent des emplois, et elles détruisent l'économie. But tax increases don't balance the budget. They just kill jobs and ruin the economy. And we are never, like they did in Ontario, and we are never going to let that happen to our great country. So be under no illusion, friends. Both the Liberals and the NDP will run deficits on an ongoing basis, and they will raise taxes, both out of your pocket. And another $1,000 for your employer or for you, double, if you are self-employed. They would both bring in tax hikes to your EI taxes. Justin Trudeau committed this week to EI premiums $2 billion a year higher than we have set. And by the way, friends, he didn't ask workers, he didn't ask employers, but then why would he? Because Justin Trudeau says, and I am going to read this from what he said on CBC this week. He said, a large percentage of small businesses are actually just ways for wealthier Canadians to save on their taxes. And you want to run a G7 economy? Friends, a large percentage of small businesses are just tax avoidance schemes? Really? Friends, small business is the backbone of our economy. With a global economy so fragile, we cannot risk a Liberal or an NDP government waging a tax war against our small businesses. That's why we have to keep taxes down on small business. We have as Conservatives, and we will. So, friends, now, some will say, you will hear this, oh yeah, that's all true, but let's try a change. Let's try the NDP, or let's try the Liberals. Let's try a change. Okay, what kind of change? I think that's the first thing you would ask. You know, maybe you want a better house. But does that mean you go out and buy swampland? You know, swampland, that is what a national plan for runaway spending, taxes, and debt is all about. And when it happens, all citizens lose, and for a long time. Look at the problems of other countries that have gone down that. Friends, a Conservative government is just as important for another big election issue, and that is our security. The protection of our country, of our families from crime. The protection for our families from crime here at home and from the growing terrorist threat in the world. Today being September the attacks that killed 24 Canadians in New York and thousands others that day. We also remember the deaths of 2 brave Canadian soldiers on our own soil just under a year ago. We're seeing such attacks everywhere, and mass slaughters, human suffering in some parts of the world on an incredible scale. That's why we have beefed up resources to our law enforcement and security agencies. That's why, while protecting our security, we remain one of the most generous countries in the world in terms of refugee and humanitarian support. And that is why the Canadian Armed Forces are proudly participating in the international military coalition fighting ISIS. I say it again because I know we have many serving and veteran members here. Thank God we have the men and women in uniform who have been willing to risk their lives in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria so we can have more security here in Canada. Friends, we must make our way in a world that is ever more dangerous. That is why, unlike our opponents, our foreign policy is not about reading polls and media reports, and it is certainly not about courting popularity among every dictator with a vote at the United Nations. That's a reason why, friends, as long as I have been Prime Minister, as long as I am Prime Minister, we have supported and we will continue to support Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state and to defend itself. That's why we have been out front warning about and now condemning Mr. Putin's invasion of Ukraine, his threats to his neighbors, putting in place aggressive sanctions against Russia, providing financial, non-lethal military aid to the Ukrainians. And friends, I say what I said to President Poroshenko in our parliament. Whether it takes 5 months or 50 years to undo, we will never accept Russian control over any square inch of Ukrainian territory. Friends, our Canada must be in this dangerous world a compassionate neighbor, a confident partner, and, when necessary, a courageous warrior. So I said at the outset, friends, that on October the 19th, Canadians will make a choice. It is a real, substantive choice about the direction of our country. It is a choice with profound, long-term implications for our families, for our security, and most of all, for our economy. It is a choice between risk and stability, between half-baked ideas and a real economic proven track record. It is the difference between an economic plan and a leap in the dark. Let the Liberals and NDP explain, really, how they are going to conjure tens of billions of dollars of promised new spending out of thin air. We Conservatives will stand and stick with our long-term plan for lower taxes, balanced budgets, affordable spending, and sound economic and fiscal management. Let the other guys explain their various schemes for a carbon tax, their plans to shut down this industry and that resource development. We Conservatives will stand for responsible environmental regulation that doesn't come at the expense of jobs and our economy. Let the other guys explain their plans. I can hardly believe I have to read this list. Let the other guys explain their plans for drug injection sites in your neighborhoods, for legalized prostitution, legalized marijuana, for pregnant mothers being told to smoke marijuana by Liberal candidates, for ending mandatory prison sentences for even the most violent crimes, and for bringing back the wasteful and ineffective long gun registry. Those are their policies. We Conservatives will stand for safe streets and safe communities, for real penalties for violent crime, and we will always put the rights of victims and law-abiding citizens ahead of the welfare of the criminal. And friends, let the other guys explain why at this point in our history, our security agencies should have their powers weakened and their hands tied, and why Canada should pull out of the big international coalition, vast international coalition, that is taking on the fight against ISIS. We Conservatives will stand up against the very real dangers that threaten the world, and we will do whatever is necessary to protect Canada and Canadians. Friends, let me just conclude with this. The privilege of governing means working hard, facing the realities of the world, making the best decisions you can, whether they are popular or not. All of your members of Parliament do this. With economic instability and security risks in the world all around us, together we have created an island of stability here in Canada, a Canada that is worth fighting for. Tonight, friends, I'm asking for your support and your hard work in the weeks ahead to keep us on that course. A Liberal government or an NDP government would mean out-of-control spending, tax hikes, permanent deficits. It would mean dangerous, knee-jerk responses to crises in the world that jeopardize our security. It will put our economy and our country at risk. Only our Conservative Party will keep Canadians safe and keep our economy moving forward. And as Conservatives, that is the duty we owe this country, to serve it, to build it, to protect it, to cherish it, because this is, and this must remain, our Canada, the best country in the world. Thank you for your efforts. God bless all of you. God bless Canada.